Are there clouds that form in specific areas or times of day?
Lenticular clouds form only over mountain peaks. They look like a stack of different layers of cloud matter. Noctilucent clouds are the highest in Earth's atmosphere. They form only between sunset and sunrise between the latitudes of 50 degrees and 70 degrees north and south of the equator.
Can cells ever change functions?
The more specialized function that a cell performs, the less likely it is for the cell to change jobs within an organism. However, there are some cells that have unspecialized functions and are able to adapt to the changing needs of the body. In mammals, a good example of cells with adapting functions would be bone marrow cells, which are responsible for producing different types of cells in the blood. Bone marrow cells produce red blood cells and 5 types of white blood cells. Slime molds of the kingdom Protista have cells that are capable of drastically changing their function. The cellular adaptations that can occur in slime molds allow them to change from single-celled amoebas to multicellular, reproductive spore producers.
How was it discovered that microorganisms are effective against bacterial infections?
British microbiologist Alexander Fleming, 1881 to 1955. Happened upon the discovery of penicillin's use as an antibacterial agent. In 1928 Fleming was researching staphylococci at St. Mary's Hospital in London. As part of his investigation, he had spread staphylococci on several petri dishes before going on vacation. Upon his return he noticed a green-yellow mold contaminating one of the petri dishes. The staphylococci had failed to grow near the mold. He identified the mold as being of the species of Penicillium notatum. Further investigation proved that the staphylococci and other gram-positive organisms are killed by P. notatum. It was not until the 1940s that Howard Florey, 1898 to 1968, and Ernst Boris Chain, 1906 to 1979, rediscovered penicillin and were able to isolate it for medical use. In 1945 Fleming, Florey, and Chain shared the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for their work on penicillin.
What safety rules should be observed during a thunderstorm?
These safety rules should be observed when lightning threatens. Stay indoors. Seek shelter in buildings. If no buildings are available, the best protection is a cave, ditch, canyon, or under head-high clumps of trees in open forest glades. If there is no shelter, avoid the highest object in the area. Keep away From isolated trees. Get out of the water and off small boats. Do not use the telephone. Do not use metal objects like fishing rods and golf clubs. Stay in your automobile if you are traveling. Do not use plug-in electrical equipment like hair dryers, electric razors, or electric toothbrushes during the storm.
What is the difference between a domain and a kingdom?
A domain is a taxonomic category above the kingdom level. The three domains are bacteria, archaea, and eukarya, which are the major categories of life. Essentially, domains are superkingdoms. A kingdom is a taxonomic group that contains one or more phyla. The four traditional kingdoms of eukarya include Protista, fungi, plantae, and animalia.
What is a Lewis acid?
Named after the American chemist Gilbert Newton Lewis, 1875 to 1946. The Lewis theory defines an acid as a species that can accept an electron pair from another atom, and a base as a species that can donate an electron pair to complete the valence shell of another atom. Hydrogen ion, proton, is the simplest substance that will do this. But Lewis acids include many compounds such as boron trifluoride, BF3, and aluminum chloride. AlCl3, that can react with ammonia, for example, to form an addition compound or Lewis salt.
What are the components of a gene?
The term gene describes a section of DNA that will be used as a template to build a strand of RNA or protein. In addition to this information, each gene also contains a promoter region, which indicates where the coding information actually begins, and a terminator, which delineates the end of the gene.
What is a seed?
A seed is a mature, fertilized ovule. It consists of the seed embryo and the nutrient-rich tissue called the endosperm. The embryo consists of a miniature root and shoot.
What are the three bones in the middle ear?
The three bones in the middle ear are the malleus, hammer, the incus, anvil, and the stapes, stirrup. The bones look somewhat like the objects for which they are named. These three tiny bones in the middle ear bridge the eardrum and the inner ear, transmitting sound vibrations.
Which star is the closest to Earth?
The Sun, at a distance of 92,955,900 miles, 149,598,000 kilometers, is the closest star to Earth. After the Sun, the closest stars are the members of the triple star system, known as Alpha Centauri, Alpha Centauri A, Alpha Centauri B, and Alpha Centauri C, sometimes called Proxima Centauri. They are 4.3 light-years away.
What is dermatoglyphics?
Dermatoglyphics, the study of fingerprints, recognizes three basic patterns of fingerprints. They are arches, loops, and whorls. The lines or ridges of an arch run from one side of the finger to the other with an upward curve in the center. In a loop, the ridges begin on one side, loop around the center, and return to the same side. The ridges of a whorl form a circular pattern. Dermatoglyphics is of interest in such diverse fields as medicine, anthropology, and criminology.
What type of diet is recommended for individuals with celiac disease?
A gluten-free diet is the only treatment for individuals with celiac disease. Celiac disease is an autoimmune digestive disease that damages the small intestine and interferes with absorption of nutrients. The villi in the small intestine are damaged or destroyed whenever sufferers of celiac disease eat products that contain gluten. Gluten is found in wheat, rye, and barley. Once the villi are damaged, they are not able to allow nutrients to be absorbed by the bloodstream, leading to malnutrition.
What are the four groups of seedless, vascular plants?
The seedless, vascular plants include ferns of the genus Pterophyta, which is the largest group, the whisk ferns of the genus Xylophyta, the club mosses of the genus Lycophyta, and the horsetails of the genus Arthrophyta.
(108) Which are the hottest and coldest planets?
The hottest planet is Venus. It has a surface temperature of 900 degrees Fahrenheit, 480 degrees Celsius. The carbon dioxide of Venus's atmosphere traps the heat, producing very high surface temperatures. Neptune is the coldest planet with temperatures of -367 degrees Fahrenheit, -224 degrees Celsius, or 51.7 degree Kelvin.
What were the birth defects caused by the drug thalidomide?
In the early 1960s, thalidomide was marketed as a sedative and anti-nausea drug. It was found to cause birth defects in babies whose mothers had taken the drug for morning sickness. Some babies were born without arms or legs. Others were born blind or deaf or with heart defects or intestinal abnormalities. Although some were mentally retarded, most were of normal intelligence. This tragedy led to much stricter laws regulating the sale and testing of new drugs.
What is La Nina?
La Nina is the opposite of El Niño. It refers to a period of cold surface temperatures of the tropical Pacific Ocean. La Nina winters are especially harsh with heavy snowfall in the northeastern United States and rain in the Pacific Northwest.
Who invented Velcro?
The inspiration for Velcro came about when Swiss engineer Georges de Maestral, 1907–1990, took a closer look at those annoying cockleburs that stick so well to things like dog fur and your favorite pair of socks. He recreated what he discovered into a new type of fastener.
What is a Chinook?
A Chinook is a wind that is generally warm and originates from the eastern slope of the Rocky Mountains. It often moves from the southwest in a downslope manner, causing a noticeable rise in temperature that helps to warm the plains just east of the Rocky Mountains. The Chinook is classified as a katabatic wind. A katabatic wind develops because of cold, heavy air spilling down sloping terrain, moving the lighter, warmer air in front of it. The air is dried and heated as it streams down the slope. At times the falling air becomes warmer than the air it restores. Some katabatic winds have been interestingly named, like Taku, a frigid wind in Alaska, or Santa Ana, a warmer wind from the Sierras.
Which hurricane names have been retired?
Once a hurricane has done a great deal of damage and caused loss of life, its name is retired from the 6-year list cycle. Countries affected by such hurricanes will petition the WMO to have the name retired and replaced with a new name.
What is the newest method of tagging a dog?
There is now a computer-age dog tag. A microchip is implanted painlessly between the dog's shoulder blades. The semiconductor carries a 10-digit code, which can be read by a scanner. When the pet is found, the code can be phoned into a national database to locate the owner. The microchip can store license number, medical condition, and the owner's address and phone number.
Which gland is the largest?
The liver is the largest gland and the second largest organ after the skin. At 2.5 to 3.3 pounds, 1.1 to 1.5 kilograms. The liver is 7 times larger than it needs to be to perform its estimated 500 functions. It is the main chemical factory of the body. A duct gland that produces bile to break down fats and reduce acidity in the digestive process. The liver is also a part of the circulatory system. It cleans poisons from the blood and regulates blood composition.
How much of Earth's surface is permanently frozen?
About 1/5 of Earth's land is permafrost, or ground that is permanently frozen. This classification is based entirely on temperature and disregards the composition of the land. It can include bedrock, sod, ice, sand, gravel, or any other type of material in which the temperature has been below freezing for over 2 years. Nearly all permafrost is thousands of years old. Permafrost is found in Canada, Russia, northern China, most of Greenland and Alaska, and Antarctica.
How many hairs are on the human body?
On the average human body, there are approximately 5 million hairs.
What is meant by the term strategic minerals?
Strategic minerals are minerals essential to national defense, the supply of which a country uses but cannot produce itself. A third to a half of the 80 minerals used by industry could be classed as strategic minerals. Wealthy countries, such as the United States, stockpile these minerals to avoid any crippling effect on their economy or military strength if political circumstances were to cut off their supplies. The United States, for instance, stockpiles bauxite, 10.5 million metric dry tons, manganese, 1.7 million metric tons, chromium, 1.4 million metric tons, tin, 59,993 metric tons, cobalt, 189 metric tons, tantalum, 635 tons, palladium, 1.25 million troy ounces, and platinum group metals. Platinum 4,704 kilograms, palladium 16,715 kilograms and iridium 784 kilograms.
Why is a lubricant, such as oil, often used to counter the force of friction?
Lubricants, such as oil, are used to reduce friction. For example, in machines consisting of metal parts, the continuous rubbing of the parts together increases the temperature and creates heat. To prevent serious wear and damage to the machines, grease and oil are applied to reduce the friction.
Which mammals have the shortest gestation periods?
Gestation is the period of time between fertilization and birth in oviparous animals. The shortest gestation period known is 12 to 13 days, shared by 3 marsupials. The American or Virginian opossum, Didelphis marsupialis, the rare water opossum, or yapak, Chironectes minimus. Of Central and Northern South America, and the eastern native cat, Dasyurus vivarinus, of Australia. The young of each of these marsupials are born while still immature, and complete their development in the ventral pouch of their mother. While 12 to 13 days is the average, the gestation period is sometimes as short as 8 days. The longest gestation period for a mammal is that of the African elephant, Loxodonta africana, with an average of 660 days, and a maximum of 760 days.
Who devised one of the earliest systems for animal and plant classification?
The naming and organizing of the millions of species of plants and animals is frequently called taxonomy. Such classifications provide a basis for comparisons and generalizations. Carolus Linnaeus composed a classification system for 2 major groups, plants, 1753, and animals, 1758. He categorized the organisms by perceived physical differences and similarities. Every plant and animal was given 2 scientific names, binomial method, in Latin. One for the species and the other for the group or genus within the species. This system of nomenclature, naming, continues to be used today. Examples of binomial nomenclature include, Schistocerca americana, grasshopper, and Pinus strobus, white pine.
How much energy does one wind turbine generate?
The amount of energy one wind turbine generates depends on the size of the turbine and the speed of the wind through the rotor. Wind turbines have power ratings that range from 250 watts to 5 megawatts, MW. The average U.S. household consumes approximately 10,000 kilowatts of electricity per year. One 10 kilowatts wind turbine can generate approximately 10,000 kW per year, or enough to power a typical household. A larger wind turbine will generate electricity for more homes.
What was the first important scientific society in the United States?
The first significant scientific society in the United States was the American Philosophical Society. Organized in 1743 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, by Benjamin Franklin, 1706 to 1790. During colonial times, the quest to understand nature and seek information about the natural world was called natural philosophy.
How does driving speed affect gas mileage for most automobiles?
Most automobiles get about 28% more miles per gallon of fuel at 50 miles. 80.5 kilometers per hour than at 70 miles, 112 kilometers per hour, and about 21% more at 55 miles. 88.5 kilometers per hour than at 70 miles, 112 kilometers per hour.
How much heat will 100 cubic feet of natural gas provide?
"100 cubic feet of natural gas can provide about 100,000 BTUs, British thermal units, of heat. A British thermal unit, a common energy measurement, is defined as the amount of energy required to raise 1 pound of water by 1 degree Fahrenheit.
What are quasars?
The name quasar originated as a contraction of quasi-stellar radio source. Quasars appear to be star-like, but they have large redshifts in their spectra indicating that they are receding from Earth at great speeds, some at up to 90% the speed of light. Their exact nature is still unknown, but many believe quasars to be the cores of distant galaxies, the most distant objects yet seen. Quasars, also called quasi-stellar objects or QSOs, were first identified in 1963 by astronomers at the Palomar Observatory in California.
How is gasohol made?
Gasohol, a mixture of 90% unleaded gasoline and 10% ethyl alcohol. Ethanol has gained some acceptance as a fuel for motor vehicles. It is comparable in performance to 100% unleaded gasoline with the added benefit of superior anti-knock properties, no premature fuel ignition. No engine modifications are needed for the use of gasohol, and all auto manufacturers approve the use of gasohol. Blends of 10% ethanol in gasoline vehicles. Since corn is the most abundant U.S. grain crop, it is predominantly used in producing ethanol. However, the fuel can be made from other organic raw materials. such as oats, barley, wheat, milo, sugar beets, or sugar cane. Potatoes, cassava, a starchy plant, and cellulose. If broken up into fermentable sugars, are possible other sources. The cornstarch is processed through grinding and cooking. The process requires the conversion of a starch into a sugar, which in turn is converted into alcohol by reaction with yeast. The alcohol is distilled, and any water is removed until it is 200 proof, 100% alcohol. 1 acre of corn yields 250 gallons, 946 liters, of ethanol. An acre of sugar beets yields 350 gallons, 1,325 liters, while an acre of sugar can produce 630 gallons, 2,385 liters. In the future, motor fuel could conceivably be produced almost exclusively from garbage. But currently its conversion remains an expensive process.
Which diamond is the world's largest?
The Cullinan diamond, weighing 3,106 carats, is the world's largest. It was discovered on January 25, 1905, at the Premier Diamond Mine, Transvaal, South Africa. Named for Sir Thomas M. Cullinan, 1862–1936, chairman of the Premier Diamond Company. It was cut into 9 major stones and 96 smaller brilliants. The total weight of the cut stones was 1,063 carats, only 35% of the original weight. Cullinan I, also known as the Great Star of Africa or the First Star of Africa, is a pear-shaped diamond weighing 530.2 carats. It is 2.12 inches, 5.4 centimeters, long, 1.75 inches, 4.4 centimeters wide, and 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters, thick at its deepest point. It was presented to Britain's King Edward VII, 1841–1910, in 1907, and was set in the British monarch's sceptre with the cross. It is still the largest cut diamond in the world. Cullinan II, also known as the Second Star of Africa, is an oblong stone that weighs 317.4 carats. It is set in the British Imperial State Crown.
What problems may be encountered when polyvinyl chloride, PVC, plastics are burned?
Chlorinated plastics, such as PVC, contribute to the formation of hydrochloric acid gases. They also may be a part of a mix of substances containing chlorine that form a precursor to dioxin in the burning process. Polystyrene, polyethylene, and polyethylene terephthalate, PET, do not produce these pollutants.
How does exercise affect bone tissue?
Bone adapts to changing stresses and forces. When muscles increase and become more powerful due to exercise, the corresponding bones also become thicker and stronger through stimulation of osteoblasts. Regular exercise, especially weight-bearing exercise, maintains normal bone structure. Bones that are not subjected to normal stresses, such as an injured leg immobilized in a cast, quickly degenerate. It is estimated that unstressed bones lose up to a third of their mass after a few weeks. The adaptability of bones allows them to rebuild just as quickly when regular normal weight-bearing activity is resumed.
Is light a wave or a particle?
Scientists have debated for centuries whether light is a wave or a particle. Isaac Newton, 1642 to 1727, was one of the early proponents of the particulate or corpuscular theory of light. According to this theory, light travels as a stream of particles that come from a source, such as the sun, travel to an object and are then reflected to an observer. One of the early proponents of the wave theory of light was Dutch physicist Christiaan Huygens, 1629 to 1695. According to the wave theory of light, light travels through space in the form of a wave, similar to water waves. Albert Einstein's work in 1905 showed that light is a bundle of tiny particles, called photons. Scientists now believe that light has properties of both waves and particles, explained as wave-particle duality.
Why do people burp?
Burping, technically called eructation, from the Latin ructare, meaning belch, is a normal occurrence that results from an abundance of air in the stomach. Nearly a half a quart of air is typically swallowed during a meal. Much of this air is relieved as a burp or belch.
What is Global Positioning System, GPS, and how does it work?
The Global Positioning System, GPS, has three parts: the space part, the user part, and the control part. The space part consists of 24 satellites in orbit 11,000 nautical miles, 20,300 kilometers, above Earth. The user part consists of a GPS receiver, which may be handheld or mounted in a vehicle. The control part consists of 5 ground stations worldwide to assure the satellites are working properly. Using a GPS receiver, an individual can determine his or her location on or above Earth to within about 300 feet, 90 meters.
How did the navel orange originate?
Navel oranges are oranges without seeds. In the early 19th century, an orange tree in a Brazilian orchard produced seedless fruit, although the rest of the trees in the orchard produced seeded oranges. This naturally occurring mutation gave rise to what we now refer to as the navel orange. A bud from the mutant tree was grafted onto another orange tree. Branches that resulted were then grafted onto other trees, soon creating orchards of navel orange trees.
What fraction of an iceberg shows above water?
Only 1/7 to 1/10 of an iceberg's mass shows above water.
How fast can a crocodile run on land?
In smaller crocodiles, the running gait can change into a bounding gallop that can achieve speeds of 2 to 10 miles, 3 to 17 kilometers per hour.
How does the sense of smell work?
The sense of smell is associated with sensory receptor cells in the upper nasal cavity. The smell, or olfactory, receptors are chemoreceptors. Chemicals that stimulate olfactory receptors enter the nasal cavity as airborne molecules called gases. They must dissolve in the watery fluids that surround the cilia of the olfactory receptor cells before they can be detected. These specialized cells, the olfactory receptor neurons, are the only parts of the nervous system that are in direct contact with the outside environment. The odorous gases then waft up to the olfactory cells, where the chemicals bind to the cilia that line the nasal cavity. That action initiates a nerve impulse being sent through the olfactory cell into the olfactory nerve fiber, to the olfactory bulb, and to the brain. The brain then knows what the chemical odors are.
Is hemlock poisonous?
There are two species known commonly as hemlock, Conium maculatum and Tsuga canadensis. Conium maculatum is a weedy plant. All parts of the plant are poisonous. In ancient times, minimal doses of the plant were used to relieve pain with a great risk of poisoning. Conium maculatum was used to carry out the death sentence in ancient times. The Greek philosopher Socrates was condemned to death by drinking a potion made from hemlock. It should not be confused with Tsuga canadensis, a member of the evergreen family. The leaves of the Tsuga canadensis may be used to make tea.
Why do dogs hear more than humans?
A dog's ears are highly mobile, allowing it to scan its environment for sounds. The ears capture the sounds and funnel them down to the eardrum. Dogs can hear sounds from 4 times farther away than humans.
How do rainbows occur?
A rainbow is a spectrum of light formed when sunlight interacts with droplets. Upon entering a water droplet, the white light is refracted, and dispersed. That is, spread apart into its individual wavelengths, just as in a prism. The light inside the droplet then reflects against the back of the water droplet before it refracts and disperses as it exits the droplet. The angle between entering and leaving is 40 degrees for blue light, 42 degrees for red.
What are organelles?
Organelles, frequently called little organs, are found in all eukaryotic cells. They are specialized, membrane-bound, cellular structures that perform a specific function.
What are the advantages and disadvantages of the alternative fuels to gasoline to power automobiles?
The emissions of gasoline are a major source of air pollution in most U.S. urban areas. Researchers are investigating alternative fuels, which are cleaner, yet also economical. Alternative fuels include ethanol, methanol, biodiesel, compressed natural gas, electricity, and hydrogen. Currently, none of the alternatives delivers as much energy content as gasoline. So more of each of these fuels must be consumed to equal the distance that the energy of gasoline propels the automobile. Some predict that in the future families may have different vehicles that use different fuels for different types of driving. For example, electric or hybrids for short trips. An ethanol/electric hybrid for longer trips, and a biodiesel vehicle for hauling large loads. Alternative advantages: disadvantages: biodiesel from cleaner than petrodiesel, cost of pure biodiesel. Blends vegetable oils: reduced emissions, B30, turn into solids in low temperatures. Electricity from no vehicle emissions, good short-lived bulky batteries. Batteries for stop-and-go driving, limited trip range. Ethanol from corn, relatively clean fuel. Costs, corrosive damage, biomass, etc. Hydrogen from plentiful supply, non-toxic, high cost, highly flammable, electrolysis, etc.
What is the difference between a virus and a viroid?
Viroids are small fragments of nucleic acid, RNA, without a protein coat. They are usually associated with plant diseases and are several thousand times smaller than a virus.
How can plastics be made biodegradable?
Plastic does not rust or rot. This is an advantage in its usage. But when it comes to disposal of plastic, the advantage turns into a liability. Degradable plastic has starch in it so that it can be attacked by starch-eating bacteria to eventually disintegrate the plastic into bits. Chemically degradable plastic can be broken up with a chemical solution that dissolves it. Used in surgery, biodegradable plastic stitches slowly dissolve in the body fluids. Photodegradable plastic contains chemicals that disintegrate over a period of 1 to 3 years when exposed to light. 1/4 of the plastic yolks used to package beverages are made from a plastic called E-collet, which is photodegradable.
When did the first nuclear power plant generate electricity for residential use?
The first nuclear power plant to generate electricity for residential use was a small facility in Obninsk, in the former Soviet Union, on June 27, 1954. The capacity of the power plant was only 5 megawatts. Due to the status of international relations during the Cold War, this accomplishment was not reported widely in the West. 2 years later, in August 1956, the Calder Hall Unit 1 power plant became operational in Great Britain. Its initial capacity was 50 megawatts of electricity. Other units were added and it continued to operate for nearly 50 years. Until March 2003. Calder Hall was the longest operating reactor in history.
Does water running down a drain rotate in a different direction in the northern versus the southern hemisphere?
There is a widespread belief that water draining from a bathtub, sink, or toilet bowl in the northern hemisphere swirls counterclockwise, while in the southern hemisphere the water drains clockwise due to the Coriolis effect. First described by the French mathematician and engineer Gaspard Gustave de Coriolis, 1792 to 1843. The Coriolis effect is the apparent deflection of air masses and fluids caused by Earth's rotation. Although it does have an effect on fluids over great distances or long lengths of time, such as hurricanes, it is too weak to control fluids on a small scale, such as bathtubs, sinks, or toilet bowls. These can drain in either direction in both hemispheres. The direction is determined by numerous factors including the shape of the container, the shape of the drain, the initial water velocity and the tilt of the sink.
Which mollusks produce the most cultured pearls?
Cultured pearls are produced by both freshwater and marine mollusks. Most of the world's cultured pearls, known as freshwater pearls, are produced by freshwater mussels belonging to the family Unionidae. Most saltwater pearls are produced by 3 species of oysters belonging to the genus Pinctida, including Pinctida imbricata, Pinctida maxima, and Pinctida margaritifera.
Which U.S. hurricanes have caused the most deaths?
The 10 deadliest United States hurricanes are listed below.
When did the concept of square root originate?
A square root of a number is a number that, when multiplied by itself, equals the given number. For instance, the square root of 25 is 5, 5x 5 equals 25. The concept of the square root has been in existence for many thousands of years. Exactly how it was discovered is not known, but several different methods of exacting square roots were used by early mathematicians. Babylonian clay tablets from 1900 to 1600 BCE contain the squares and cubes of integers 1 through 30. The early Egyptians used square roots around 1700 BCE, and during the Greek classical period 600 to 300 BCE, better arithmetic methods improved square root operations. In the 16th century, French mathematician René Descartes 1596 to 1650, was the first to use the square root symbol, called the radical sign, \\.
What are the specialized cells in plants?
All plant cells have several common features, such as chloroplasts, a cell wall, and a large vacuole. In addition, a number of specialized cells are found only in vascular plants. They include parenchyma cells, parenchyma, from the Greek para, meaning beside, and enchine, meaning to pour in. Cells are the most common cells found in leaves, stems, and roots. They are often spherical in shape with only primary cell walls. Parenchyma cells play a role in food storage, photosynthesis, and aerobic respiration. They are living cells at maturity. Most nutrients in plants, such as corn and potatoes, are contained in starch-laden parenchyma cells. These cells comprise the photosynthetic tissue of a leaf, the flesh of fruit, and the storage tissue of roots and seeds. Collenchyma cells, collenchyma, from the Greek term kolla, meaning glue. Cells have thickened primary cell walls and lack secondary cell walls. They form strands or continuous cylinders just below the surfaces of stems or leaf stalks. The most common function of collenchyma cells is to provide support for parts of the plant that are still growing, such as the stem. Similar to parenchyma cells, collenchyma cells are living cells once they reach maturity. Sclerenchyma cells, sclerenchyma, from the Greek term skleros, meaning hard. Cells have tough, rigid, thick secondary cell walls. These secondary cell walls are hardened with lignin, which is the main chemical component of wood. It makes the cell walls more rigid. Sclerenchyma cells provide rigid support for the plant. There are two types of sclerenchyma cells: fiber and sclereid. Fiber cells are long, slender cells that usually form strands or bundles. Sclereid cells, sometimes called stone cells, occur singly or in groups and have various forms. They have a thick, very hard secondary cell wall. Most sclerenchyma cells are dead once they reach maturity. Xylem, from the Greek term xylos, meaning wood, is the main water-conducting tissue of plants and consists of dead, hollow, tubular cells arranged end to end. The water transported in xylem replaces that lost via evaporation through stomata. The two types of water-conducting cells are tracheids and vessel elements. Water flows from the roots of a plant up through the shoot via pits in the secondary walls of the tracheids. Vessel elements have perforations in their end walls to allow the water to flow between cells. Phloem. The two kinds of cells in the food-conducting tissue of plants, the phloem, from the Greek term phloios, meaning bark, are sieve cells and sievitabe members. Sieve cells are found in seedless vascular plants and gymnosperms, while sieve tube members are found in angiosperms. Both types of cells are elongated, slender, tube-like cells arranged end to end with clusters of pores at each cell junction. Sugars, especially sucrose, other compounds, and some mineral ions move between adjacent food-conducting cells. Sieve tube members have thin primary cell walls but lack secondary cell walls. They are alive once they reach maturity. Epidermis. Several types of specialized cells occur in the epidermis, including guard cells, trichomes, and root hairs. Flattened epidermal cells, one layer thick and coated by a thick layer of cuticle, cover all parts of the primary plant body.
Which scientists made important discoveries associated with the cell?
In the late 1600s, Robert Hooke, 1635 to 1703, was the first to see a cell. Initially in a section of cork, and then in bones and plants. In 1824, Henry Dutrochet, 1776 to 1847, proposed that animals and plants had similar cell structures. Robert Brown, 1773 to 1858, discovered the cell nucleus in 1831, and Matthias Schleiden, 1804 to 1881, named the nucleolus. The structure within the nucleus now known to be involved in the production of ribosomes, around that time. Schleiden and Theodor Schwann, 1810 to 1882, described a general cell theory in 1839. The former stating that cells were the basic unit of plants and Schwann extending the idea to animals. Robert Remak, 1815 to 1865, was the first to describe cell division in 1855. Chromosomes were named and observed in the nucleus of a cell in 1888 by Wilhelm von Waldeyen-Hartz, 1836 to 1921. Walther Fleming, 1843 to 1905. Was the first individual to follow chromosomes through the entire process of cell division.
Which bird migrates the greatest distance?
The Arctic tern, Sterna paradisea, migrates the longest distance of any bird. They breed from subarctic regions to the very limits of land in the Arctic of North America and Eurasia. At the end of the northern summer, the Arctic tern leaves the north on a migration of more than 11,000 miles. 17,699 kilometers, to its southern home in Antarctica. A tern tagged in July on the Arctic coast of Russia was recovered the next May near Fremantle. Australia, a record 14,000 miles, 22,526 kilometers, away.
Why is styrofoam a good insulator?
Styrofoam insulates well because the foam form increases the length of path for heat flow through the material. It also reduces the effective cross-sectional area across which the heat can flow.
When was the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, created and what does it do?
In 1970, President Richard M. Nixon, 1913 to 1994, signed an executive order that created the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, as an independent agency of the U.S. government. The creation of a federal agency by executive order rather than by an act of the legislative branch is somewhat uncommon. The EPA was established in response to public concern about unhealthy air, polluted rivers, and groundwater, unsafe drinking water, endangered species, and hazardous waste disposal. Responsibilities of the EPA include environmental research, monitoring, and enforcement of legislation regulating environmental activities. The EPA also manages the cleanup of toxic chemical sites as part of a program known as Superfund.
Who invented the telescope?
Hans Lippershey, c. 1570 to 1619, a German-Dutch lens grinder and spectacle maker, is generally credited with inventing the telescope in 1608 because he was the first scientist to apply for a patent. Two other inventors, Zacharias Janssen and Jacob Matthias, also developed telescopes. Modern historians consider Lippershey and Janssen as the two likely candidates for The title of inventor of the telescope, with Lippershey possessing the strongest claim. Lippershey used his telescope for observing grounded objects from a distance. In 1609, Galileo also developed his own refractor telescope for astronomical studies. Although small by today's standards, the telescope enabled Galileo to observe the Milky Way and to identify blemishes on the Moon's surface as craters.
Who owns the forests in the United States?
Private individuals own 57% of the forest in the United States. The remaining forest area land is owned by the federal government, 20%. Corporations, 15%, and state and local governments, 8%.
Who proposed that the left side of the brain has different functions than the right side of the brain?
Scientists have been aware for at least 100 years that each side of the brain controls actions on the opposite side of the body. However, it was not until the 1950s that Roger Sperry, 1913 to 1994, conducted the pioneering research to determine the different functions of the left side and right side of the brain. His experiments contributed to the split brain theory. Sperry received the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1981 for his work.
What is the essential relationship between the heart and lungs?
The teamwork of the heart and lungs ensures that the body has a constant supply of oxygen for metabolic activities and that the major waste product of metabolism, carbon dioxide, is continuously removed. This occurs through the pulmonary circulation, with the heart supplying blood that has moved through the body to the lungs. The lungs connect to the heart through blood vessels. The pulmonary artery delivers deoxygenated blood to the lungs from the right ventricle, and the pulmonary vein delivers oxygenated blood to the left atrium of the heart.
What is a bug, biologically speaking?
The biological meaning of the word bug is significantly more restrictive than in common usage. People often refer to all insects as bugs, even using the word to include such organisms as bacteria and viruses as well as glitches in computer programs. In the strictest biological sense, a bug is a member of the order Hemiptera, also called true bugs. Members of Hemiptera include bedbugs, squash bugs, clinch bugs, stink bugs, and water striders.
Is there one numerical value for sea level?
Sea level is the average height of the sea surface. Scientists have calculated a mean sea level based on observations around the world. The mean average sea level takes into account all stages of ocean tides over a 19-year period. Numerous irregularities and slopes on the sea surface make it difficult to calculate an accurate measure of sea level.
Which countries have the highest reserves of natural gas?
Worldwide reserves of natural gas are estimated at 6,254 trillion cubic feet, with 41% of the total located in the Middle East and 32% of the total located in Europe and the former USSR.
What is Excelsior?
Excelsior is a trade name dating from the mid-19th century for the curly, fine wood shavings used as packing material when shipping breakable items. It is also used as a cushioning and stuffing material. Poplar, aspen, basswood or cottonwood are woods that are often made into Excelsior.
How long does it take light from the sun to reach Earth?
Sunlight takes about 8 minutes and 20 seconds to reach Earth, traveling at 186,282 miles. 299,792 kilometers per second, although it varies with the position of Earth in its orbit. In January, the light takes about 8 minutes 15 seconds to reach Earth. In July, the trip takes about 8 minutes 25 seconds.
What health risks are associated with smoking?
Smoking harms nearly every organ in the body. Tobacco smoking, especially cigarettes, is linked to lung cancer, which is the most common cause of cancer death in most countries. 87% of lung cancer cases are caused by cigarette smoking. More deaths are caused each year by tobacco use than by all deaths from human immunodeficiency virus. HIV, illegal drug use, alcohol use, motor vehicle injuries, suicides, and murders combined. For each pack of cigarettes smoked per day, life expectancy is decreased by 7 years. A 2-pack-a-day smoker will likely die at 60, compared to 74 for a non-smoker in the United States. There is an increased incidence of other lung diseases. Heart and blood vessel diseases, stroke, and cataracts in smokers. Women who smoke face increased problems with infertility, preterm delivery, stillbirths. Babies born with low birth weight, or having a baby die from sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS.
What is Müllerian mimicry?
Fritz Müller, 1821–1897, a German-born zoologist, described a phenomenon in 1878 in which a group of species with the same adaptations against predation was also of similar appearance. This phenomenon is now called Müllerian mimicry. Müllerian mimics include wasps and bees, all of which have similar yellow and black striped patterns that serve as a warning to potential predators.
What is the deadliest natural toxin?
Botulinal toxin, produced by the bacterium Clostridium botulinum, is the most potent poison of humans. It has an estimated lethal dose in the bloodstream of 10 to 9 mg per kilogram. It causes botulism, a severe neuroparalytic disease that travels to the junctions of skeletal muscles and nerves, where it blocks the release of the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, causing muscle weakness and paralysis, and impairing vision, speech, and swallowing. Death occurs when the respiratory muscles are paralyzed. This usually occurs during the first week of illness. Mortality from botulism is about 25%. Because the bacterium can form the toxin only in the absence of oxygen. Canned goods and meat products wrapped in airtight casings are potential sources of botulism. The toxin is more likely to grow in low-acid foods, such as mushrooms, peas, corn, or beans, rather than high-acid foods like tomatoes. However, some new tomato hybrids are not acidic enough to prevent the bacteria from forming the toxin. Foods being canned must be heated to a temperature high enough and for a long enough time to kill the bacteria present. Suspect food includes any canned or jarred food product with a swollen lid or can. Ironically, this dreaded toxin in tiny doses is being used to treat disorders that bring on involuntary muscle contractions, twisting, etc. The United States Food and Drug Administration, FDA, has approved the toxin for the treatment of strabismus, misalignment of the eyes, blepharospasm, forcible closure of eyelids, and hemifacial spasm, muscular contraction on one side of the face.